Okay, now that we know some of the basics of some of our components, we're going to start to look at some programmable electronics. So we're going to be able to simulate this through Tinkercad. So we're going to go along where we have all of our components. We're going to scroll down a little bit, and we're going to grab something called Arduino Uno R3. And we're going to pull that out onto our display. I'm just going to zoom out a little bit so I can see. So basically what we have here is this guy right here is called a microcontroller. And what we can do is we can program it and teach it how to behave. So this specific part of the board is the integrated circuit that actually has the brain inside of it, you could think of it as. This is just a power cord that's going to supply power into our Arduino. These are physical objects that you can also have. We're just going to use a simulation of one today for you guys to play with. Now that we have that, we're going to grab a couple components out of our library on the side as well. So let's grab a resistor, and we're going to change the resistance of it. So it says resistance right now 1 kilo ohm, so that's 1,000 ohms. We're going to lower that down a little bit. As we learned in our last lesson, that's going to increase the brightness of our LED if we lower it down. Now, if we lower it down too much, then it is going to damage our LED. So we're going to go with 200 ohms as our set value of resistance. Okay? And then we're going to pull an LED out with it as well. And you can choose what color of LED you want to use. I am going to use green. Now what we're going to do is create a circuit. So we have what are called outputs on our Arduino. And these outputs are basically just numbered connection points that we can then tell the Arduino what to do with that numbered connection point. So if we look over here at the top, we have digital outputs. So we're going to be using one of our digital outputs, and we're just going to use pin number 1. So we're going to connect a wire to that, and I'm going to bring it out and just connect it to one end of our resistor. And now the current should be able to flow out of pin number 1 into our resistor. Then we're going to do is we're going to connect that resistor to our anode leg of our LED. So I'm just going to bring it around like that to our anode. And now we need to complete our circuit. So our circuit back to our Arduino needs to go to something called our ground, which is another way of referencing 0 voltage. Okay, so we're going to draw a line coming through here and bring it into our ground. Now, if you want, you can notice that you can change your wire colors too. So commonly, like we talked about before, your ground, which would be like a negative terminal, is often colored black when working with DC circuits. So if we want, we can change that to black. And if we want, we can change our positive to red as it's feeding into our circuit. The color of wire in between, this is kind of an internal wire color. You can kind of choose that to be whatever you like. Okay. All right, now that we have our circuit set up, now we're going to look at applying some code into our Arduino. So if we go up at the top here, there's a button called Code. When we pop that open, it gives us a library of some block-based coding. There's a drop-down menu here that will allow you to choose between blocks, blocks and text, or just text. Unless you're an advanced coder, we're going to stick with blocks. If you have a coding background, you could use some text, or just to see what it's converting these blocks into, it gives you the text code that it's going to convert those blocks to. So just to keep visuals easy, I'm going to turn off the text and just look at the blocks for right now, and then we can still see our circuit. Now there is some base code set in here. We're going to remove that right now, so we're just going to grab it with our hand, and we're going to drag it into this trash bin right here and drop it in. We're going to make some of our own code. So up at the top here, you have different color options. So output control, input math, notation, and variables. We're going to be in the output tab first. And we're going to start by grabbing the second block from the top. And we're going to pull that into our code base here. So it prompts us to first say set pin. Now we're using pin number 1. So let's hit the drop down menu beside 0. We're going to select pin number 1. And it says set it to, the options are high or low. High represents a positive voltage. So if we have a positive voltage coming out of here, that's going to push electricity trying to get it to a place of 0 voltage. So remember, our ground is 0 voltage. If we apply positive voltage here, that's going to force current to flow through our circuit back to the ground, and when we do have it set to high and we have that positive voltage, we should have current going through and our LED should light up. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to look at our control options. So we're going to go over here and say, grab a weight, a timed weight, and we're going to set it on there. Now, this could be adjusted to whatever wait time we want, and duration seconds or milliseconds. So a millisecond would be 1/1000th of a second. Now let's go back to output, and we're going to get another of the same block. So it says set pin, and we're also going to grab another weight, and we're going to stack those together. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go and select this to set pin 1, and we're going to change it to low. So now what should happen is it'll say, okay, set pin 1 to high. It's going to pause or wait for 1 second. Then it's going to set pin 1 to low. And when we set it to low, that's going to basically set it at 0 volts. So going in will be 0 volts. Coming out will be 0 volts because it's referenced to ground here. So that means that we shouldn't have any current flowing through when it's sitting in low. And it'll pause at that for 1 second. Now this should automatically loop back up in our code. This software will automatically put loops in. If we look now what our text would look like for that, so these are the actual text commands that we're going to be putting into the Arduino. And I'm just going to take those away just so we can see a little bit better. Okay, now we're going to go in and we're going to hit start simulation and watch what happens. So now it's going through our code, and you can see that as we have pin number 1 high, it forces that current to come through our LED, causing it to light up, and then it does that for a second, goes to low, and it will then turn that off. So that is your first lesson on how to use a digital version of an Arduino.